RealAgriculture.com presents Under the Microscope with BioVision Seed Labs. We're here for episode 1 of RealAgriculture.com's Under the Microscope with BioVision Seed Labs. We're joined right now by Holly Gelich. She is the Business Development Manager with BioVision. Welcome today, Holly.
Hello there, Sean.
Holly, harvest in Western Canada is, besides some areas like in Northern Alberta, it is relatively getting close to completion. A lot of samples are coming into the lab. What are some of the things that we are seeing in this year's samples across the West that stick out in your mind?
The seed testing season for us has really gotten busy the last 4 weeks. We've received samples from pedigreed seed growers that's intended for the retail market. We've received samples from farmer producers as well that is intended for their own farm usage. So it has really just wrapped up in the last 4 weeks. What we are seeing overall, if you put a blanket across Western Canada, is pretty decent germinations this year.
Yeah, and that would be, I guess, because we have had limited rain. Well, in Southern Alberta today it's pouring, but over harvest while stuff was sitting in the swath or maybe even standing, we had limited rainfall whatsoever, correct?
Yes, I would say so. So really what we saw in Manitoba was very, very hot and dry in the months of July and August. So the crops came off relatively early. You could also mimic that to some extent in Saskatchewan and parts of Alberta as well. So really at the end of the day, for the period of the harvest and just pre-harvest, we had a very dry conditions and hot. So that really moved the crop into ripening without any adverse conditions.
Okay. What about diseases or foreign, I'm not sure, what other materials? Like what are you finding there?
What we are finding in the wheat samples across Western Canada is a lot of ergot. So if you're familiar with ergot, it's a black disease body that replaces the kernel of the grain and grows within the head. Ergot really starts in the grasslands surrounding the fields. And during the months of June, when the grasses are flowering, it produces spores that then go into the crop. And if the wheat is flowering at that specific time in place, then it will infect the individual kernels of the wheat and then replace it throughout the growing season with the ergot body.
Yeah, it's like that ugly black sort of chunk that's just that's sitting in the sample, correct?
Absolutely. And it could be extremely varied in size. It can be the same size of the wheat kernel, or it could be significantly larger.
Now, isn't ergot a hallucinogenic? Like, wasn't it used at one time? Like, it is some sort of chemical reaction too, doesn't it, or something like that?
Yes, it's very adverse to be used for human consumption as well as any other animal consumption. So the ergot is cleanable if you're talking to pedigree seed growers in some cases. It can be separated by color sorters. In some cases, it can be separated with gravity as well due to the variance in the weight from the kernel of wheat. So there are some remedies that can be in place for pedigreed seed growers.
What about any other diseases you're finding?
We are finding localized pockets of true loose smut in southern Alberta. And when I say true loose smut levels, I would really be addressing those levels of smut that are higher than 2%. So in the Canada grade tables, 2% is the benchmark for true loose smut. Obviously, there are other means that the seed growers can get around that by treating the seed. But really, we have seen some localized pockets.
The smut is where we walk through the field while it's standing, and all of a sudden our pants our tan khakis are all black.
They're absolutely black. So basically the disease, it infects the kernels and really disintegrates them to powder. So as you're walking through the field, it's really senescing off of the head of the wheat.
So in the harvest sample, what does it look like?
In the harvest sample, you can't actually see it. That's the unfortunate part of it. To evaluate for true loose smut, samples need to go to a laboratory who is accredited by CFIA to evaluate for true loose smut. And really the process we use is we take the barley sample, we remove the hull of the barley with lactic acid so that all that we're left with is the barley embryo. So that embryo is extremely small. And when we take that embryo, it's white in color to begin with, and we stain it with a trypan blue. It's a colorant. And then we look at 400 embryos underneath the microscope to evaluate for the presence of mycelium. So mycelium is just little webs within the embryo itself, and that's how we analyze for true loose smut.
So are really ergot, true loose smut the real kind of the prevalent ones you've seen the most of?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
One thing that I do want to note is that in Manitoba, we do a lot of testing in Manitoba as well. We have seen Fusarium graminearum levels lower than we have the last number of years, and I think that is contributed to that hot, dry weather that they had.
Interesting. Fusarium graminearum popping up in other locations?
Yes, we are still seeing it pop up in locations that are traditional to Fusarium graminearum, but again, we're just getting into the testing season at this point.
Yeah, a future episode we will definitely talk about Fusarium graminearum. So, okay, Holly, thank you very much for joining us today, and we'll see you episode 2.
Great. Thank you, Sean.